Now, the first phase of this current ceasefire deal is expected to end on Saturday, March 1st, but there is ongoing conversations about the possible expansion of this phase. Now, joining us now to discuss today is Jonathan Conricus, the former IDF spokesperson and senior fellow at Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us today. Now, we're learning right now.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Now, we're learning right now Israel will not withdraw forces from the Philadelphi border, which sits between Gaza and Egypt. The withdrawal was supposed to begin if this ceasefire deal extended. Now, tell us how this could impact the deal going forward.
Well, there are two main implications that I understand. One is that basically the hourglass, the virtual hourglass of the rebuilding of Hamas, militarily speaking, doesn't yet turn, and Hamas will find it continuously difficult to smuggle in weapons underground and above ground. That's perhaps the most important thing. Just to be clear, whenever Israel, if Israel will pull out of the Philadelphi Corridor, that will effectively mean that Hamas will start smuggling in weapons, whether above or below ground. I have very little trust in Egyptian officials preventing that from happening, and I actually believe that Egyptian officials are working in cahoots with Hamas. And for me, it's clear as soon as Israel withdraws from there will be weapons coming in. So that's number one. Number two is that this will be a violation of the ceasefire agreement. I understand that there are understandings between the US and Israel, but in terms of Hamas, as per the agreement that Israel agreed to, this will be a violation, and now we'll see how Hamas will respond to it. If they will respond by using force, by not releasing hostages that they're supposed to return, or whatever else will happen, or perhaps taking extreme measures that I would rather not speak about, but taking extreme measures against hostages that are still in Hamas captivity, almost 60 of them. So this is a significant move. It makes sense. It never made sense from the beginning for Israel to agree to leave the Philadelphia corridor, but we did indeed agree to do it.
Yeah, so we're also hearing developments right now that Steve Witkoff might return back to the Middle East for negotiations. We do know that an Israeli delegation potentially in the next few days will also be heading out. Tell us what they will likely try to achieve. Will it come to this phase one extending or going into phase two of this deal?
Yeah, as far as I know, there's an Israeli delegation that has been ordered by the Prime Minister to fly to Egypt. That's a last hour development. And I think they are going there in order to try to, first and foremost, extend the first stage and to get more Israeli hostages live or already murdered back into Israel, and to look to a way to implement the second stage, but probably a different second stage. And I think that it's interesting and important to listen to the statements of President Trump. He's been reflecting on the situation and constantly saying, I probably would do things differently. And we've seen Secretary of State Rubio echo those statements, specifically emphasizing that all of the remaining Israeli hostages, including 4 Americans, should be returned now. Not that it would be a deal that would take a lot of time to implement, but to return the Israeli hostages together and to do it quickly. That I think these are two important things, and that I think those will be the guiding principles for the Israeli delegation as they're negotiating.
Yeah, you mentioned Americans. We do believe, and right now intelligence believes Idan Alexander, an Israeli American, is still alive at this point. People are waiting to see how this deal will further impact the hostages. Tell us what you think, how phase one, extending it or going into a phase two, could also impact the rest of the hostages returning back to Israel.
I think it's absolutely crucial for the future of the hostages. If, as long as we negotiate and as long as there's a deal in effect, under mutual understanding, Hamas and Israel, that a deal is in effect, I think that the chances of getting more hostages out alive continue to exist. The moment that, for whatever reason, Hamas violation or a different political decision in Israel, but the moment that that changes, and we go back to hostilities and to fighting, I think that the biggest and most difficult outcome of that will be that it will significantly jeopardize the chances of getting our live hostages back. Because I think that the fighting will be different. I think that what Israel will do against Hamas, and I say will, I don't think it's whether Israel will do it, but it's only a matter of timing before Hamas will violate the deal and Israel will go back to fighting. And this time, I think that fighting will be different. And hopefully it will really be the beginning of the end of Hamas, its rule over Gaza and its ability to threaten Israeli civilians. Sadly, extremely sadly for the families, is that I think that will it will elevate the chances of us not being able to get our hostages back.
Yeah, so many people. This is the first Shabbat, actually, in a few weeks. There won't be a release of hostages. So many people just hoping there will be a next Shabbat where the rest of these hostages will return. Thanks so much for your time and for joining us today on ILTV. Jonathan Conricus.
Thank you.